Hi, Heather. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Okay, so I asked Heather for an interview because I want to focus this month on mental health. Heather, what is it that you do and what's your title?
So I'm an occupational therapy intern at Untitled Jobs. My title is an occupational therapy student outside of Untitled Jobs. What occupational therapy is pretty much what we focus on is everyday activities that an individual goes through life, such as they're called activities of daily living or instrumental activities of daily living, and they're just pretty much everyday occupations. So we focus on that. We set goals to get these individuals where they need to be, but that's pretty much what our scope of practice has to deal with.
Okay, well, how did you get involved in that? How did you choose that career?
So I chose this career because I wanted to be in the medical field, but I didn't know what area I wanted to be in. I just knew I wanted to help people. And my mother, she's a nurse, and she was like, you should be an occupational therapist. And I was like, she don't know what she's talking about. And sure enough, I looked into it and I was like, oh, that's definitely where I want to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What role does relationships or do relationships play in what you do?
So relationships among other individuals are very important in what I do. It can help me in many ways, such as like interpersonal skills. My relationships are pretty much based off of the support that they provide me. So they provided me to make it this far in school. So that's kind of how relationships affect me. Maybe even then, like I love relying on other people and letting them rely on me as well. So
that's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel slightly overwhelmed when people are depending upon you or looking to you to provide those answers?
Yeah, most definitely. I always feel overwhelmed, but then I just like take it one step at a time, and I know I'm gonna like find the answer one way or the other for them.
If I came to you for help, the individual that I am, what kind of individual would you hope that I would be after receiving your help?
So after receiving my help, I would hope that you would feel fulfilled. That's my main goal. It's based on all your intentions and where you want to be in life. So our scope of practice pretty much focuses on the holistic aspect of the human. So all that means is everything, like you as a whole. So if you don't feel fulfilled, like within your goals, we're going to try to make new goals. We're going to try to make it suiting to you pretty much.
Okay. What's been the most rewarding aspect of your work?
The most rewarding aspect is just having people come to me afterwards and be like, I can see where your heart is through your work. And I just think that's amazing because I'm like, wow, like I'm glad I'm expressing my love for this field as I'm working with any patients or future clients or anything like that.
Okay. What has been the most difficult aspect of your work?
The most difficult aspect are the psychological aspects that may come with each individual. So whether that's mental health issues, just any point of view that they have of themselves, that's really hard because sometimes it can be a barrier for that individual, and I can notice, but I see their potential and I can't force them to have my eyes, and I wish I could sometimes, like how I view them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the toughest.
I understand that. And so your involvement with Untitled Jobs, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so while I'm here at Untitled Jobs, I'm just working with the youth and the staff. I haven't got a chance to get as close to the staff as I wanted to, but eventually we'll get there. And what I'm doing is just trying to figure out where their barriers are, and then also trying to identify some of their strengths. And so as I do that, I'm wanting to address them, and I'm wanting them to see, like, you're doing well in all these areas, how can we make you better? That's only if they're willing to as well. And then, so some of the things that we're focusing on here at Untitled Jobs is transportation needs to get to and from work, housing needs, getting their driver's license. So those are all considered instrumental activities of daily living. So that's underneath our scope of practice as well. It even goes as far as housing, so providing them with resources in any way I possibly can.
Okay. I feel like she's taking a test. Okay, she's rattling off that's this.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. Okay, so is there anything that you'd like to just share about your journey? Outside of work, just you as a person, as an individual.
Yeah, so I have learned through the process that even though life gets hard, that if you just keep pushing through, it will be fulfilling one way or the other, and not to sell yourself short. That's literally my biggest thing this month that I've noticed, not to sell yourself short.
Okay, and so what does that look like? Not going into too much detail, but when you say sell yourself short, I have a lot of thoughts on that. And so what do you mean when you say that?
So what I'm meaning is pretty much just not looking at how you can't do it, instead look how you can, and try to focus on your abilities and understand your limitations as well. So if you can't do something, that's totally fine, but the fact that you tried, I feel like shows that you didn't sell yourself short, shows that you put in the effort. And that's what I think I'm learning throughout this whole last area of my schooling.
Okay, that's one thing that I had to learn. I read a book one time and it was called Why Others Misunderstand You. And so it gave the analogy like this cup, and it had water in it. And it says most people look at it and they'll either say it's half empty or half full.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
But then it introduced another aspect to, and that would be the individual who would look and say, well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I had a personal problem with the people who would look at that cup and say, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because what that said to me, I'm not saying they were saying it, but what it said to me, you're not invested. You don't care. You don't want to be a part of the team. And so that book helped me understand, everybody has a perspective, and just because their perspective is different than mine, that doesn't take away from them.
Yeah.
And so when I learned that, it helped me deal with people a little bit better in meetings, because sometimes, I don't care. And when I would hear that, I'd be like, you don't care. This is important.
Yeah.
But they were just saying, it's not that important to me. And so, okay. Well, I can say that since I've been working with you, when she comes on site with the youth, she doesn't just stand around or interview or have her phone. She actually gets in and works with the youth. So with that, I want to know, how did you develop that kind of work ethic? Because she doesn't have to, meaning she could sit up and just interview and talk and leave, but she actually comes and does physical labor, the same as the youth, the same as I do. And it wasn't shocking to me, but I just want to know, where did you develop that work ethic?
So growing up, my mother always was trying to strive to be better. So I felt like I had to take a position like of helping out like at home and taking like the areas that she was lacking, because I saw how much she was like giving to like make us successful like as a family. So I think that I saw all her hard work, and I'm like, I aspire to be her so much, because she's a strong female. So I'm like, that's what I want to be, a strong female in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems from a distance you've done that pretty well thus far.
Thank you.
So let me throw a curveball.
Yeah.
In your profession, is there a belief or is there a fact that men and women think differently?
So, kind of.
Okay.
It depends on what area of the body that you're looking at. As in, our brain structure, our brain development, it has shown that there are major differences between genders. So I find that very interesting. I like to look at that. I also like to look at the psychology aspects between males and females. So kind of through our practice, we get to see the difference of how males, I guess, deal with things based off how their brain works compared to females. So that's the kind of the area that I see the difference. Okay.
The particular reason that I asked you that, recently I was asked to do an interview with an individual, and the topic will be, why do men seem to not want to share their emotions as much as women? And so my viewpoint will be, and has been, that based on me being a man and interacting with a bunch of men, a lot of men have not taken the time to really look at how I feel and why I feel it.
Yeah.
And so that's just my experience, and that's what I'm going to bring to the table, because I said before I got into a relationship with God, I just might feel something and I didn't question why. Meaning when I would walk in a room and I might be happy, but all of a sudden my inward thoughts all of a sudden go negative.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay attention. I just go with it, like, this is how I'm feeling and that's what it is. And then I took what was called an Enneagram test.
Oh, yeah.
And I really liked the Enneagram because it helped me realize the fact that the majority of times that happened to me, there was something going on in the room that I perceived as out of place. And so I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And so when I perceived it out of place, no one's explaining to me why I'm feeling that way. But when I took this course and I read into it, I began to, when I would feel those negative feelings, assess first, my perception can be off.
Yeah.
I can be in a room and I can see something and it might not be the way I see it. And so one step that I've taken is, am I seeing properly? So for me, I pray, I think that's out of line, but am I seeing properly? And then something else that it helped me to do is realize, as a believer in Christ, I don't have to accept feeling that way.
Yeah.
I used to just go with the feeling and respond. Mm-hmm. Now I question the feeling. And so do you have anything to say about why you believe that if you believe that, men are hesitant to express their emotions, as opposed to women who seem to be able to do it easier?
I'm not unsure, or I'm not sure if I'm being honest. I always question the same too. I know there's more psychological things and more to it, and I just haven't dived that deep, which I feel like is like something I should look into, because it's very valuable even in our field, like, to understand. Because I know in our therapeutic relationship aspects, like, you want to get on that level of emotions and you want to understand their psychological thought process throughout therapy. So I'm like, I think I should dive that deep into it to understand and have a better interpersonal skill with the male in the future.
Okay. That was a lot.
Sorry.
I feel heavy. I feel heavy now. I'm like, ooh. Okay. Do you have any questions or anything that you'd like to discuss with me?
My question was based off of how you were talking about the community reintegration, the rehabilitation process of afterwards. I thought that was very interesting. So I was just wondering how you came about that.
Okay, remind me a little bit.
It was we were talking about it this morning about how
my business.
Yeah, your business. Yeah, I couldn't think of the name. Sorry.
Because by me having served over 27 years, that has given me a seat at some tables.
Yeah.
And what I did for the last 25 years was help people. And what that looked like is, whether it be through curriculum or programming or counseling. And so when I was released, I want to keep helping people, but I found out in this society, you really need to find your niche.
Yeah.
Because when you say, I want to help people, the next question now is, who?
Yeah.
And I'm like, everybody.
Yeah,
and they're like, okay, if you focus on everybody, you might not be the best you can be with this particular group. And so I prayed about it and I got rehabilitation and reentry. And so what that looks like is, I personally believe that from the moment anyone is put in a pair of handcuffs, there's trauma that occurs.
Yeah.
That is not natural.
Yeah.
Even as children, back when I played cowboys or Indians, you played bad guys or good guys, back then, when you were put in handcuffs, there's trauma. And so I not only believe that trauma has affected individuals who become incarcerated, but I believe that the officers, the courtroom staff, and the families involved are somehow affected, because let's say this, whether a man is guilty or innocent, he's placed in handcuffs. Now he's going through all kinds of things in his mind, whether he's guilty or innocent. Then when he's sentenced or given a bond hearing or whatnot, someone has to consider his circumstances and the safety of society. So that's putting undue duress on them, even though that's their job. That's a heck of a job, especially when you don't know if this is the right individual.
I agree.
Oh, by the way, during that time of arrest, if he had a job, most likely that's an unexcused absence, which is going to lead to a penalty in pay or a penalty as far as being suspended. And so when I thought through that process, I said, I want to help people who have been traumatically affected by incarceration. And so what that looks like is, for those who are incarcerated, I basically contact different administrators and ask them. I'll give an example. I was in contact with an official in Dade County, Florida, and he said, we're having a lot of disciplinary problems. And it says, do you think you can build a curriculum to help us with the disciplinary problems? And so I built a curriculum that just basically dealt with decision making. Because when I was incarcerated, a lot of people don't think about the next moment.
Yeah.
They're just caught up in this moment. This is how I feel. You did that to me, so I'm going to do this to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one development of curriculum. But on the flip side, someone said, well, if you believe that families are traumatically affected by family members becoming incarcerated, what will you do for them? And I said, honestly, the same thing, decision making.
Yeah.
Because learning to properly make decisions, I don't think there's a perfect way to do it. But I think that with instruction and exercising your thought process methodically, you can become a better decision maker. And so that's why basically now I create curriculums that deal with decision making, that surrounds people who have been involved with the criminal justice system, whether judicially, whether they were offenders, or whether they were victims.
That's amazing. So through my research, so I'm completing my PhD, and
I need everybody to get that. I need everybody to get that. She's completing her PhD, so we're very proud of her.
Yeah, in occupational therapy. So right now I'm in the last process, and I'm doing a lot of research. So before I came, that's what I was doing, and I was writing chapters. And through my research, I found that not only does the handcuff cause trauma, I also noticed that while my research first started with youth. So I learned about youth to begin with. So what I've learned was that through my research, youth experience more trauma within being in a detention center than anything. So even if that's just going through the juvenile court system with payment fees, most of these youth are coming out of poverty, so the payment fees are being causing detrimental effects onto their well-being, and it's causing trauma that they don't even realize that is happening. But when going back to being inside of a detention center, it's even causing more effects, because it can cause psychological effects like mental health issues such as depression, loneliness, a lot more other areas. So that causes trauma as well. Or even the way they handle, the way staff at the detention centers handle the youth or detainee, I guess. So it even stems from that area. So I agree that decision making is the biggest process. So in my research, I had seen that impulsivity is the biggest thing with youth, because their brains are still developing. They're going through growth, and so the developmental process is so not complicated, but it's just so in depth that it matters who they're going to be in the future. So even though they make mistakes and they are impulsive, it can also benefit them in a way, because they learn and they grow. But sometimes society kind of causes more trauma by saying, well, you made these mistakes, and adds other barriers to them instead of supports.
You're right. I was in a conversation, and this is a professional in the area. I don't recall their title, but they were speaking about African Americans, and they made this statement. And so I'm just going to repeat what I heard, and if you have a thought, I'd really love to hear it. Yeah. They said, listen, we're going to go all the way back to kindergarten and preschool, when teachers begin to punish different individuals. And statistically, a lot of punishments that are given out at young ages in schools. If you have an African American or you have other races in the class or whatnot, a lot of times the punishment is meted out to the African American child quicker or more often.
Yeah.
And so this individual was saying just what you were saying, but they were applying it to African Americans, saying that can create a mindset.
It does.
So we're not even talking about breaking the law. We're saying when this child who may be another race does wrong, you have words of, let's say, why do you think that was wrong, what you did?
Yeah.
Do you think you could have made a better decision? As opposed to, you did wrong, and so I'm going to punish you.
Yeah.
And so I'm not an expert in that field, but I could see how, well, yeah, because now your mindset is geared towards punishment, and most children don't want to be punished. And so now I either change or I want to try to get away with something.
Yeah.
As opposed to, if you ask me question, do you think what you did was wrong? Do you think there was a better way? And they were just saying that in their research, they found that punishment among African American children was like a norm, as opposed to helping them to develop a mindset of, okay, I saw that, I understand that. What do you think about that, if you have an opinion at all? And I'm not just saying, the reason I'm saying African American children, because now I'm going to fast forward. There is a disproportionate amount based upon the ratio of African Americans who live in America and how many are incarcerated. And so rather than just looking at, well, they committed a crime, okay, let's go all the way back and see about the development. And that's where our conversation was.
Yeah, so I through my research, I did notice that minorities are even more likely to enter the adult prison system if they are within the juvenile justice system than white American individuals. And I just found that shocking, but I didn't do an extent amount of research of the reasoning behind it, which I feel like is very interesting, because this is something that has been an issue. So if minorities are what make up most of the prison population, there's something that is stemming from something deeper within that we just haven't found. So I think that all starts from programming of those individuals as they're younger. So I kind of do agree, like as they're a child, as they're growing, maybe trying to find better ways of managing misbehaviors. I think that's the biggest thing. And even within the juvenile justice system, because sometimes being harsher to the individual just because they made a mistake kind of can decrease their thought or like self-worth process, I guess, like how they feel about themselves. And so I'm thinking that that's why they're more likely to enter the adult prison system. But that's just from my perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Just, different conversations, because when we see problems, a lot of people just look at now. It's just like the Bible. People say, well, we have all these morality problems. You're looking at the now.
Yeah.
But if we look at the Bible, then we realize that, okay, that started a long time ago when you decided that lying was okay when it was convenient.
Yeah.
And so I think that the incarceration problem in America, not just among minorities, but the incarceration period in America, we can't just look at the problem. Let's look at the inception of the problem.
I agree.
So with that, would you like to discuss your faith before we go?
Yes, yeah. So I did grow up in a Christian household, well, Christian church. My mom and my dad kept the accountability of sending me and my sibling to church, and it was our obligation weekly. And if we didn't go, there were like consequences, which is okay because she's our mother and our father. They're meant to do that. So like as in taking away a cell phone, stuff like that. So us just being in the environment, I guess, just kept us growing in faith as we got older. And now that I'm older, I do admit I do stray away a lot, but I feel like being here at Jonah Jobs, it's just kind of funny. It made me realize God's like, hey, I'm here. Don't forget about me. I know you're going through school. I know you're going through life. But I'm still here and our relationship is still here. Did you forget about me? And I just think it's kind of funny because he shows it in like the littlest ways, as in like me coming here and feeling fulfillment. And I'm like, why do I feel like that now? And it's definitely because I know God He's moving in my life.
Well, very proud of you.
Thank you.
Glad that you have a relationship with God. In closing, but I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because the youth, at least that I'm involved with, are not only receptive to what you're doing, but they like it. And one reason when we have different discussions or I ask you different questions, I'm trying to better understand what others are going through.
Yeah.
You know,
that's great as a supervisor. Like, you're directing them daily, so that's amazing that you care, because I feel like sometimes we feel like at our age nobody cares. Like, they're just like, here, go and wing it and figure it out. So that's amazing coming from you.
Oh, definitely. One thing, when I work construction, because Untitled Jobs has a lot of different parts.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, brother, when I was 19 and 20, you couldn't pay me to get up at 5 or 6 in the morning to catch a bus or to walk to go to a construction site. I said, even though I'm in school, I'm still not doing it. And so I'm looking at, and quite honestly, I'm looking at people who in some cases have drinking problems, drug problems, not necessarily a normal routine home life, meaning things change, people come and go at will, and they're still getting up. I felt so strongly and believed in them so strongly, I went on Facebook and I did a Facebook Live, which I rarely do a Facebook Live, but I did a Facebook Live, and I said, I just want to let this generation, I don't have a specific age, but I'm going to say from 16 to 24, I believe in you, man. And I believed in them before. I used to always tell different people, they said, man, that generation is wild, or that generation is this. And I said, you know what I know about that generation? They're going to do what they want to do. Yeah. So if they happen to get a hold of the right ideology, if they happen to believe in the right thing, and I just want to leave it general, because from my viewpoint, that's believing in Jesus Christ. But if someone doesn't know Christ, they're going to do it. They're going to rep it, and they could care less what anybody thinks. And I said, that is a strength. So our task, our help to that next generation, to me, is to demonstrate to them, I understand where you're at, and let me just hopefully ask you if you need to redirect that. I mean, I want you to speak up. I want you to speak out. I want you to do it because you believe in it. But I just want you to really examine what you're believing in and who you're believing in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's amazing. I can see from the youth that they hear you, they listen. And even if their faith is different than yours, I know that they still are like, wow, like they can see your faith moving through the organization, or God moving, I guess. And I think it's funny because we have little side talks. I've been able to have an opportunity to have a therapeutic relationship as well as like friendships with some of them, and I've noticed that a lot of them, they tell me one thing, but like I know that they are very respectful to you, other directors like Salo, Jeremiah of the organization, and it amazes me because I'm like, y'all would never know because they probably don't establish that friendship because you're still a supervisor beforehand. But yeah, I got a chance to see that, and it was awesome.
Okay, well, thank you, and I've enjoyed it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.